Welcome everyone to the House Committee on Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs. My name is David Tarnas. I'm the chair of this committee and grateful to be chair. This is quite an adventure. Appreciate that you're all with me on this. I'm learning lots. And I'm assisted very ably by my vice chair, Representative Greg Takayama, and member Representative Kanani Souza. And the other members also help out a lot, but they'll be here later. They're in their office preparing for this hearing and other hearings and doing other work, and no doubt monitoring us. So that's why I always ask testifiers to come up to the podium so that everyone who's listening to this remotely, both on the internet, on YouTube, and throughout the building can hear you and see you. We try to be as transparent as possible. So today is Wednesday, February 22nd. It's 2 p.m., conference room 325 here at the State Capitol, and we're also, of course, running this by video conference. We will request all the testifiers to limit their testimony to about 2 minutes, and I'll ask you at that point to summarize. That's just to make sure we've got time for everyone to give testimony and for us to deliberate on these measures. For those who are testifying remotely, I would request that you leave your video off and your audio muted until I call on you to testify. Unmute yourself, turn your video on, testify, and then afterward, please mute yourself again and turn your video off. That would be great. And please make sure you don't use any copyrighted or trademarked images behind you on your Zoom background. And I'd request everybody who testifies, whether remotely or in person, just to, it's okay to disagree, but let's not be disagreeable. We're all allies here in this legislative process, trying to do the best we can for the people of Hawaii. Let's see, and if you're online and your connection breaks, don't panic, just rejoin us, and then I'll try to let you testify when you get back online. And if we have to reschedule, we'll make sure to post notice so everyone knows when the hearing will be and decision making will be. Okay, so with that, let's go ahead and start our hearing. I would like to preface our hearing today saying that in today's hearing and tomorrow's hearing, we'll be hearing the rest of the commission, the rest of the bills that were proposed by the commission to improve standards of conduct. 16 bills today, 6 bills tomorrow. We've heard some of the commission to improve standards of conduct bills in previous hearings, but we've also heard all of the bills proposed by the Office of Elections, the Campaign Spending Commission, and the Ethics Commission. We moved out a number of those measures. And many of those measures were in fact identical or virtually the same as these commission bills. And the reason why that is that members of the Office of Elections and, members of the Campaign Spending Commission and the Ethics Commission, those two commissions, were also members of the Commission to Improve Standards of Conduct. And so they brought their package of bills to the commission, and many of those bills were adopted as part of the commission's package of bills. So they're duplicates. So that's why you may find when we've considered bills from the commission that are duplicative, I may recommend to defer those bills if we've already passed out a measure that is the same or virtually similar. So it's not like I don't want to pass these commission bills, it's just that we've already passed out a bill that does the same thing. Not everyone understands that process, so I will explain it now. I will explain it again at other hearings, but that's the way that we try to be efficient. The reason why I'm hearing all these bills, including the duplicative ones, is because I promised to do so at the beginning of session, that we would hear all the bills proposed by the Commission to Improve Standards of Conduct. It was created by the House. I want to honor the process and make sure that we give all their bills a fair hearing. Okay, so with that preface, let's go ahead and start. We have House Bill 705 relating to legislative allowance. Requires each House of the Legislature to post a report of the legislative allowance expenditures for each member of the respective House on the Legislature's website. Just as a reminder, we did pass out House Bill 136, which is virtually the same bill, back 20 days ago, February 2nd, and it's moving through the process at the legislature. So first up, we have testimony and support from Judge Dan Foley, who is the chair of the Commission to Improve Standards of Conduct. Judge Foley, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members of the committee. I deeply appreciate your committees hearing our commission's bills and giving them consideration. I also appreciate your committee's practice of posting testimony of all witnesses early online, so witnesses like myself can review it and consider it before testifying. I also deeply appreciate the transparency the commission, or your committee, has shown in its consideration and decision-making with all the bills before it. Very much consistent with my commission's recommendations for greater transparency and accountability in state and county government. I have submitted testimony in support of House Bill 705, as I did with the Ethics Commission's Bill 136. They are, in fact, identical. We feel that those bills would contribute to greater transparency, accountability in state government, help restore public trust, and I shall remain available if your committee has any questions.
Thank you very much, Judge Foley, and again, thank you very much for your leadership as the chair of the Commission to Improve Standards of Conduct. We very much appreciate it. Next, we have testimony in support from Robert Harris, Executive Director, Hawaii State Ethics Commission. Mr. Harris, the floor is yours. Please proceed.
Good afternoon. Aloha, Chair, Vice
Aloha.
Chair, Representative Souza. I will heartily echo the comments of Judge Dan Foley and appreciate you hearing all of these bills. This is a bill that you've heard before. Our testimony is relatively short. We'll stand on it and be available for any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from Dave Mulinix, our Revolution Hawaii. And please refer members to his written testimony. Next, we have written testimony and support from Gary Hooser and John Thatcher. And next, we have testimony and support from Greg Misakian. Please proceed.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to provide some additional information. I stand on my written testimony, but I also want to make one statement. I've provided testimony for a number of bills today. I'm just going to make this statement once for the sake of time. So if my name comes up again, I don't actually need to present further information. I just wanted to get this out once. So I'm the second vice president of the Kukua Council and a board member of the Waikiki Neighborhood Board. I'm testifying today as an individual, so I'm not representing anyone other than myself at this particular hearing. I am concerned this year that I have participated in this process in several ways, and I'm going to read my statement here. By drafting and submitting measures that were introduced as bills, by advocating for our Kupuna and residents of Hawaii, by submitting written testimony and giving oral testimony at hearings, and by reaching out to legislators with substantive supporting data and information as to why these measures should be supported and passed. Along the way, I learned the process is not very democratic and is further tainted by a lack of proper and fair procedural guidelines and rules. I also learned that too few legislators have too much power. The process is also tainted by legislators who do not seem to understand that their lack of response to emails or calls, or to address clear mistakes in committee referrals by redirecting to the proper subject matter committee, is egregious and does not follow a fair and equitable process. As of today, the House rules have not even been published and been made available, and the legislative session is well underway. The general public also does not know what the internal rules are, including rules and procedures, and we can see the obvious flaws and unfairness in this process. All residents of Hawaii should have an opportunity to read and review bills, provide testimony, and have a voice. I call on all legislators to step up and do the right thing. The legislative session needs to be extended and reformed so that measures have a chance to be properly and fairly scheduled and heard. Mahalo for your time, and I appreciate this opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much. as far as I know, that when 48 hours ago, just for your information, 48 hours before today's session, the rules were put on the table of our chamber desks, and at that point they were made public. So they should have been available, and I will verify that during this hearing. But if they weren't, then I'll find out why. But I'm quite sure that they were posted for everyone to review at the same time that we got them to review in their current form that we adopted today. So thank you very much for that, and appreciate your vigilance, because that helps us do our job better. Okay, let's move on we have written testimony and support for numerous individuals: Thomas Brandt, Joe Wilson, Christopher Boscol, Marilyn Mick, Irene Klopfer, Rexanne Dubiel, Elaine Wender, Shannon Rudolph, Marion McHenry, Michael Lilly, Barbara George, and Minister Hector Hoyos. Is there anyone else here wishing to testify on HB 705? If not, questions, members? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thanks very much. HB 706, relating to financial disclosures. It requires all members of the legislature to disclose certain relationships with lobbyists or lobbying organizations in their financial disclosures. And just as for your information, we heard the same bill, House Bill 141, which was a part of the Ethics Commission package, on February 2nd. And we approved it from this committee at that time. Testimony on HB 706. First, we have Judge Foley. Judge Foley, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I did submit testimony in support of House Bill 141 from the Ethics Commission, which is an identical bill. Both these bills will contribute to greater transparency in the legislature and uncover potential conflicts. And I will remain available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, we have testimony and support from Robert Harris, Hawaii State Ethics Commission.
Good afternoon. Aloha. The Ethics Commission will stand on its written testimony and support and appreciate your consideration of this bill. Thank you.
Certainly. And just for everyone's note, your requested amendment was the same that you had requested earlier, which is to amend the effective date to January 1, 2025, so that you could get your online financial disclosure system and guidance documents prepared.
That is correct. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that clarification. Next, we have testimony and support from Dave Mulinix. Next, we have testimony and support from William Bagasol, Democratic Party of Hawaii Legislative Committee. Welcome. The floor is yours. Please proceed.
William Bagasol, co-chair for the Legislative Committee for the Democratic Party. We submitted written testimony on this case. We stand on that written testimony, and we support the good work of the House, the legislature, the commission in not only this particular bill, but in all on all bills. We broadly support the good work of the commission and of the House Resolution 9 recommendations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your testimony. Next, we have testimony and support from Judith Mills Wong, League of Women Voters. We have testimony and support from Nancy Cook-Lauer from All Hawaii News. Testimony and support from Gary Hooser with Pono Hawaii Initiative. Testimony and support from Greg Misakian. Did you want to say anything more, Mr. Misakian, or?
Chair, actually, I'm going to, for each of the following bills, just to save time for the hearing, I don't need to testify further. I would basically be saying the same message. So I'm going to refer to my previous oral testimony, and I stand on all of my written testimony for the remainder of the hearing.
Thank you very much, sir, and I would refer members to his written testimony that you have before you.
Mahalo.
Mahalo. Next, we have testimony with comments from Kate Payne, and testimony and support from numerous individuals, including Dana Keave, Will Karen, Thomas Brandt, Christopher Boscol, Joe Wilson, Marilyn Mick, Elizabeth Hansen, Roger Hansen, Shannon Rudolph, Marion McHenry, Cliff and Mary DeVries, Michael Lilly, and Barbara George. Is there anyone else here wishing to testify on House Bill 706? Seeing none, questions, members? If not, we'll move on. Thanks very much. Next, we have House Bill 707 relating to false claims. It makes it a Class C felony to make false, fictitious, or fraudulent claims against the state or a county, or any of their departments or agencies, and it disqualifies a person from holding elective public office for a period of 10 years upon conviction of making a false, fictitious, or fraudulent claim. First up, we have testimony and support from Judge Foley. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. This is one of 3 bills, false claims, false statements, and fraud, that the Commission worked with the Law Enforcement Coalition, the Attorney General, the 4 county prosecutors, and with contributions of the FBI to give our state and county law enforcement the same tools that the federal government has that has been investigating and prosecuting misconduct in public office in the state of Hawaii for the last couple of years. So these are modeled after the federal statutes that have been used that are currently lacking in Hawaii revised statutes. And I will remain available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, we have testimony and support from David Van Acker, Deputy Attorney General. Welcome. Please proceed.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name's David Van Acker. I'm a supervising Deputy Attorney General with the Department's Special Investigation and Prosecution Division. We wholeheartedly support this measure. We couldn't have said it better than Judge Foley, and we do stand on our written testimony. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just so I'm clear, you, in your testimony, you wanted the terms claim and material defined, and you wanted to change the word frivolous and fictitious to the word fictitious. Is that correct?
That's right. And with respect to the defining the terms, the debate as to whether or not a claim needs to be material to the government has been debated throughout the United States Court of Appeals. They disagree on that point. So we may as well head that off at the pass and make that a requirement in Hawaii. That's my humble thought.
Okay, great. Well, we may have questions about that, so I appreciate you being around to respond. Okay, next we have testimony in support from Gary Kam, Campaign Spending Commission. Please proceed, Mr. Kam.
Good afternoon, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Takayama, and members of the committee. I'm Gary Kam. I'm with the Campaign Spending Commission, and I will stand our brief with written testimony. Thank you. In support.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from Tricia Nakamatsu, Department of Prosecuting Attorney, City and County of Honolulu. Welcome. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Department will stand on its written testimony and support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony from Parker Bodie, Honolulu Police. Please proceed.
Aloha, I'm Captain Parker Bodie of the Honolulu Police Department. The HPD supports House Bill 707, and we stand by our written testimony. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have testimony and support from Dave Milanix, and Gary Hooser, and Greg Misakian, Derek Harlan, Thomas Brandt, Joe Wilson, Christopher Bosco, Marilyn Mick, Irene Klopter, Troy Schacht, Shannon Rudolph, Marion McHenry, Michael Lilly, Barbara George, and we have testimony with comments from Kim Koko Iwamoto. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on HB 707? Yes, please. Come on up, introduce yourself, and proceed.
Thank you. My name is William Benta. I'm a Deputy Public Defender. I'm very sorry. I think we must have missed providing testimony on this bill. Certainly, we support the efforts of the Commission and do not object to the creation of this new Class C felony. We would have a problem with the fact that a person who is charged is not able to get a deferral in this case. Like our testimony later today for 710 and 711, our office does object to mandatory sentencings or types of cases where one cannot seek a deferral. And the reason for that is if you look at the description of what could be charged in this case, it's so broad that it could be something of a grand nature that deals with multi-millions of dollars. It could be something very, very tiny, and both individuals should not be treated the same before a sentencing judge. And the fact that you carry a felony conviction for the rest of your life, it could harm someone who's very young, naive, perhaps somebody who's under the influence of a superior in committing a crime, and they'll have to carry that conviction for the rest of their life. And so we would ask if the committee would consider perhaps allowing a person to seek a deferral. And as I pointed out in my other testimony later today, deferral is not automatic. It's a process that one must go through, and actually you have to seek it before a trial. So you have to actually enter your guilty plea or your no contest plea and then petition the court to give you the deferral. So that helps to cut down on the number of trials. Otherwise, I could see a lot of people seeking to have a trial on a case like this because of the broad nature of the wording in the bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And members, we do have testimony from the public defenders on the other related bills where the description of what their request is, just to make sure that an individual who is charged under this section, their point is that they would like them to be eligible for deferred acceptance of guilty plea or nolo contendere plea under Chapter 853. So I refer you to those testimonies. Okay, anyone else here wishing to testify on this measure? Seeing none, questions, members? Yes,
A question
Representative Souza.
for Tricia Nakamatu. Thank you. Can you provide some insight or feedback on the deferral issue and what perhaps the views of the prosecuting attorney's office are?
Well, from our standpoint, we feel that not allowing deferral is appropriate in this case. A lot of times these are going to be first time. It's what's known as a white collar crime. It's not as opposed to a violent crime. A lot of these are going to be first time convictions, but as indicated, they can be quite serious, and it requires quite a lot of workup for law enforcement to bring a case like this. I suppose technically it is possible that it could be brought for something small, but for a offense of this severity and requiring this magnitude of work, it's not really going to happen on that small level.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions, members? If not, we'll move on to the next measure. House Bill 708, relating to lobbyists. Amends the information in the statement of expenditures reports that lobbyists and other individuals are required to file with the Hawaii State Ethics Commission to include the identity by bill number, resolution number, or other similar identifier of the legislative or administrative action that was commented on, supported by, or opposed by the person filing the statement. For everyone's information, we heard and passed out of this committee House Bill 137, which was the same bill offered by the Ethics Commission. Testimony on HB 708. First up in support, Judge Dan Foley, Commission to Improve Standards of Conduct. Judge Foley, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I did offer testimony in support of House Bill 137, which is the identical bill. We feel both bills will contribute to greater transparency, accountability, and avoiding conflicts of interest in the legislature. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next testimony in support from Robert Harris, Hawaii State Ethics Commission.
Good afternoon. Aloha.
Aloha.
As you mentioned, so the Ethics Commission is in support of this measure. As you mentioned, this bill, or a substantially similar bill, was heard before, and there was concern expressed by a well-known and well-respected lobbyist, and I believe the primary concern is the threshold of what is lobbying that would need to be reported. We believe that the standard of lobbying is pretty well established, and we're happy to continue working with all lobbyists and trying to make sure that's understood and where necessary to provide guidance. However, we would stress the importance of trying to capture what we'd call behind-the-scenes conversations. Publicly submitted testimony is publicly available, but it is the interactions that are not seen to the public that is squarely the purpose of the lobbyist law and part of the reason why we are advocating for this measure. Let me just give you a quick contrast. For example, if a pharmaceutical company were to hire a lobbyist and they indicated that they lobbied on health matters, it doesn't provide a lot of information to the public about what is going on, versus specifically identifying the bills. It's just a greater degree of transparency and really goes to further the purpose of the lobbyist law. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from Dave Milenix, Our Revolution Hawaii. Testimony and support from Judith Mills Wong, League of Women Voters. Testimony and support from Gary Hooser, Pono Hawaii Initiative. Testimony and support from Dennis Jung, Democratic Party of Hawaii. Testimony and support from Greg Misakian, Lynn Matasau, and Dana Kiave. Testimony with comments from Kate Payne, and testimony and support from Thomas Brandt, Joe Wilson, Christopher Boscol, Irene Klopfer, Elizabeth Hansen, Roger Hansen, Hunter Hevelin, Shannon Rudolph, Marion McHenry, Cliff and Mary DeVries, Michael Lilly, and Barbara George. Is there anyone else here wishing to testify on HB 708? If not, questions, members? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thanks very much. Next, we have House Bill 709 relating to mandatory lobbyist training. It requires a lobbyist training course to be designed and administered by the State Ethics Commission. Makes the lobbyist training course mandatory for all lobbyists who are required to register and renew their registration with the State Ethics Commission. Imposes administrative fines for violations. For your information, we heard and passed out of this committee an identical bill, House Bill 138, back February 2nd. On this measure, we have first up testimony and support from Judge Foley, Commission to Improve Standards of Conduct. Please proceed, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I did submit testimony in support of House Bill 138, an identical bill, and I think both bills will help avoid problems. No lobbyist will be able to claim he or she didn't know what the law and rules and regulations were. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, sir. Next, we have testimony and support from Robert Harris, Hawaii State Ethics Commission.
Thank you again. The Commission is in support of this bill. As noted in our testimony, 20 other jurisdictions have a similar requirement, and we would commit to making sure that there is an online self-directed course that any lobbyist can take at any time so long as they have access to the internet. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from Judith Mills Wong, League of Women Voters, Dennis Jung, Democratic Party of Hawaii State Party Chair, Gary Hooser, Pono Hawaii Initiative, Greg Misakian, Regina, and then testimony with comments from Regina Gregory, testimony and support from Lynn Matasau, testimony with comments from Kate Payne, testimony in support from Hunter Hevelin, Shannon Rudolph, and Lexi Mellor. Is there anyone else here wishing to testify on House Bill 709? Questions, members? If not, we'll move on. Thanks very much. And if people watching this are wondering why are there no questions, it's because we had the same bill before and we asked all our questions then. So it's not that we're not interested. Okay, moving on. House Bill 710, relating to government, establishes the Class C felony offense of using or making false statements or entries in matters within the jurisdiction of the executive, legislative, or judicial branch of the state or any county. Disqualifies a person from holding elective public office for a period of 10 years upon conviction of making a false statement or entry. Next up, we have testimony in support from Judge Foley, Commission on Standards of Conduct. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. This is part of the law enforcement package that the committee has proposed to give our state and county law enforcement the same tools the federal government has to investigate and prosecute corruption in state and county government. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, testimony and support from David Van Acker, Deputy Attorney General. Please proceed.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. David Van Acker, Deputy Attorney General with the Department's Special Investigation and Prosecution Division. Again, we echo Judge Foley's comments and we stand on our testimony. Thank you.
And your testimony, just to be clear so everyone knows, you're recommending that we replace the phrase person knowingly and willfully to person intentionally or knowingly. And do you want to explain just briefly why that's important?
Yes, that's because under HRS Section 702-210, the requirement that an offense be committed willfully is satisfied if a person acts knowingly. I believe that's because we're a model penal code state, which is different than the federal code.
Got it. Okay, thanks for that explanation. Okay, next we have testimony and support from Gary Kam, Campaign Spending Commission. Please proceed.
Good afternoon, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Takayama, members of the committee. I will stand on our brief written testimony in support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next we have testimony from the Office of Public Defender, Mr. William Bento.
Good afternoon once again, Chair and Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is William Bento. I'm a Deputy Public Defender. Like our testimony previously in HB 707, I believe it was.
Yes.
The only thing we oppose in the bill is the fact that a person would not be allowed to receive a deferral, or at least seek one from the sentencing judge. And I just wanted to point out something. The prosecutor stated in regards to that bill that these are big cases, they're white-collar cases. HPD would be spending a huge amount of time and money to bring these cases. But what happens in these cases is that they throw out a wide net, and everybody gets picked up in that net. Not just the big players, but even the small players, the people who may have been following instructions along the way. Billionaires that get caught up in these kinds of schemes, they end up serving their time, they come out and they're celebrities. They use the funds that were not confiscated by the government to buy legitimacy again. But poor folks, regular working people, all they have is the ability to seek employment after they finish their jail time. They wouldn't be able to do so if they're actually burdened by a conviction when it might be unnecessary to do so. Thank you.
Sir, and if I could, you mentioned in your testimony you were comparing someone who may have taken unauthorized sick leave that might then would run afoul of this new felony offense, and so your concern, if you could speak to that issue, because I think it's something that your testimony speaks to out of 3 pages. Maybe you could just speak to that portion of it.
Certainly. The way the bill is drafted, it's quite broad, and we can foresee that someone who makes that type of claim for sick leave could be considered making a false claim. Now, the final draft, of course, we'd have to look at, but the way it's written, it's possible for someone to be charged in doing so. Now, is that wrongdoing? Yes, but I don't think it's the same compared to somebody who's, as we pointed out, involved in a multi-million-dollar scheme to defraud the state government.
Okay, thanks for that explanation. Okay, next we have testimony and support from Tricia Nakamatsu, Department of Prosecuting Attorney, City and County of Honolulu. Welcome, please proceed.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Deputy Prosecutor Tricia Nakamatsu, appearing on behalf of the department. Apologize, we submitted 2 different versions of testimony.
Yes.
The second is supposed to be a revised, updated version, so I'm sorry if there was any confusion. We are asking, we are in strong support of the bill as is, but we would also ask, as a continuation from our testimony on January 31st regarding HB 126, that Section 2 of that bill, HB 126, be considered for insertion into this bill. It was a title issue with HB 126, but we feel that it definitely is in line with the purpose, the tone, and intent of this bill. And as the committee has previously heard that bill, we hope that you would consider it.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Members, I would refer you to Ms. Nakamatsu's testimony at the bottom of page 1 is the recommended amendment that she is asking for under obstruction of justice. Okay, let's move on. We have testimony and support from Parker Bodie, Honolulu Police. Please proceed, sir.
Good afternoon. I'm Captain Parker Bodie of the Honolulu Police Department. The HPD supports House Bill 710, and we stand by our written testimony. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from the Democratic Party of Hawaii, Dennis Jung. Gary Hooser, Pona Hawaii Initiative, testimony with comments from Nikos Leverins. Mr. Leverins, please proceed.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members. Nikos Leverins. I'm going to confine my comments to the fact that, the proposed exclusion from holding public office or campaigning for public office is currently 10 years for this bill and for other bills that would create new felony offenses, which, as a general matter, I'm leery of for the reasons that the public defender has noted, and that instead, the 10 years be extended to 20 years pursuant to HB 799 and SB 1220, and that this, both for these new offenses and for offenses against public administration, that would significantly deter people who have very questionable records from even campaigning for office. So mahalo for the opportunity to provide testimony.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from Greg Misakian, Dara Carlin, Lynn Matasau, and Shannon Rudolph. Is there anyone else here wishing to testify on House Bill 710? Seeing none, questions, members? If not, thank you very much. Let's move on. House Bill 711 relating to fraud. Establishes the offense of fraud as a Class B felony, disqualifies a person from holding elective public office for a period of 10 years upon conviction of fraud. First up, we have Judge Foley, Commission on Standards of Conduct. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. This is the last of the three bills recommended by the commission that we worked with the state and county law enforcement to give them the tools the federal government has to investigate and to prosecute corruption. And since this is the last of the three bills, I would like to briefly comment on the public defender's testimony. I deeply respect the office. They graciously provided similar testimony to the commission. And the mandatory terms of imprisonment was a controversial issue before our commission. There was division among commission members, as there were on term limits. I think those are the only two bills where we somewhat split. But the majority came down primarily because of the mandate of the commission to address misconduct in public office, and it's primarily to act as a deterrent. That, as the public defender stated, it is a severe sentence. A mandatory term of imprisonment is a severe sentence, and its severity is the hope of the commission and law enforcement to get state and county officials and employees to think twice before they commit fraud, make a false statement, or make a false claim. And that's the purpose, not to lock people up, but to keep people from being prosecuted and charged. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that additional explanation. Next, we have testimony and support from David Van Acker, Deputy Attorney General.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. David Van Acker, Deputy Attorney General with the Department Special Investigation and Prosecution Division. We do stand on our written testimony. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony from Gary Kam, Campaign Spending Commission. Please proceed.
Good afternoon, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Takayama, members of the committee. I will again stand on our brief written testimony in support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next testimony from Office of the Public Defender, Mr. William Bento. Please proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon once again, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. In this particular bill, as stated by Judge Foley earlier, we are in opposition to the mandatory jail term. 10 years is a long time to put your hands in the paroling authority to determine how many of those 10 years you're going to serve. Well, I mean, I've been doing this long enough to see that many people do the entire 10 years. Whether that would happen under this statute, I don't know. With all due respect to Judge Foley, and he is a person that I greatly respect, and the work of the commission, but to say that the hope is to deter people from committing the crime, We all know what's legal and illegal in this state. If there was enough deterrence, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, but if there was enough deterrence, Halava would not be full, and we would not be sending our citizens to Arizona to be housed and jailed there. So if the hope is to deter people, then I think we have to do a lot more than this bill, and that is to educate those that this bill targets specifically about the fact that this is what they would be facing. And again, these kinds of cases cast a wide net, and it's not just the big fish that get caught in that net. And that's why we're saying that people cannot be treated the same when they're caught up in this sort of conspiracy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony in support from Tricia Nakamatsu, Department of the Prosecuting Attorney, City and County of Honolulu. Welcome, please proceed.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Deputy Prosecutor Tricia Nakamatsu, appearing on behalf of the department. Just briefly, we would echo and absolutely echo the words of Judge Foley in that deterrence is an important factor. This and the other two bills that were mentioned as far as law enforcement matters are not necessarily crimes of passion, like somebody loses their temper and strikes out at somebody, hits somebody, punches somebody. These are things that somebody should be able to stop and think, am I doing the right thing? I should be telling the truth. We all, at some level, know that we should be telling the truth in our dealings, our business dealings with each other, with the state, with corporations, and that's something that we feel is very basic, should be something that people do stop and think about if they're not already doing so. We do feel that the penalties, of course, we we understand that it's always the purview of the legislature to decide, but we do note that not allowing someone to get a deferral is a heightened deterrence, and then one step further is the mandatory minimum, which we feel is appropriate. Available for questions, if any. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony in support from Gary Hooser, Pono Hawaii Initiative, Dennis Jung, Democratic Party of Hawaii, Greg Misakian, Lynn Matasau, Derek Carlin, testimony with comments from Kim Koko Iwamoto, and testimony in support from Hunter Hevelin and Shannon Rudolph, and testimony with comments from Natalie Iwasa. Is there anyone else here wishing to testify on House Bill 711? If not, questions, members? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thanks very much. House Bill 712, relating to recordings of public meetings, encourages boards to maintain any electronic audio or visual recording of a board meeting as a public record on the board's website, regardless of whether the written minutes of the meeting have been posted. Amends the information that must be included as part of the written minutes of board meetings, requires boards to provide the state archives with a copy of any electronic video or visual recording of a board meeting before removing the recording from the board's website. First up, we have testimony in support from Judge Foley, Commission on Standards of Conduct.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. This is a revised version of a previous bill that the legislature passed in its previous regular session that was vetoed by the governor. We attempted to address concerns raised by state agencies at that time by encouraging rather than requiring certain actions and reducing the scope. I was pleased to see testimony from various state agencies in support of the bill with various amendments that I could see were consistent with the intent and purpose of the bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony with comments from Cheryl Park, Office of Information Practices. Thanks for being here. Please proceed.
Good afternoon. I'll summarize my testimony to say that the Sunshine Law applies to state and county boards, including the neighborhood boards, and not all boards have paid staff to help them with the technical requirements that may be required for an online meeting such as Zoom, which is why some of them still prefer meeting in person. And sometimes what they use is just a simple tape recorder or a digital voice recorder or even their own cell phone to make temporary audio recordings, which then they use to create written minutes. So they don't necessarily have things that are already online. And this bill should be amended to clarify that, if they have these recordings available but they're not online, you don't have to go and create something to put online to save for the archives. You know, that's why we suggested a simple amendment, just adding the word online on bill page 5, lines 13 to 16 to read, if an electronic audio or video recording of the meeting is available online, a link to the electronic audio or video recording of the meeting to be placed at the beginning of the minutes. Just add in the word online. Simple.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from the Department of Accounting and General Services. Keith Regan, welcome. Always good to see you, sir.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, member of the committee. I thank you for this opportunity to testify on behalf of this bill. Representing Comptroller Regan, I am Dr. Adam Jansen, and I have the privilege of serving as State Archivist and Administrator of the State Archives. DAG stands on its testimony, and as a self-identified records nerd, I greatly appreciate the recognition of the role that the State Archives plays in preserving content such as this. Because of the transitory nature of digital records, if these things are destined to come to the State Archives at some point in the future, I will bring to you the visual of a 5 1/4 floppy drive and say why we prefer to get digital records sooner rather than later. It's not like paper. If we forget it in 30 years, it won't be here anymore. And having preserved board minutes and agenda for decades, and now moving into these recordings, we can speak very clearly to the value that these recordings bring that you will not find in minutes and agendas. So for future posterity, we strongly encourage that these digital recordings be preserved and transferred for long-term preservation. I welcome the opportunity to address any questions and concerns you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You've got the right job as a records nerd. And we're grateful. Next, we have testimony and support from the Department of Land and Natural Resources. Welcome. The floor is yours. Please proceed.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, thank you. The department stands on its written testimony and support, and I'd like to thank Judge Foley for addressing most of our concerns from the bill last year. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have testimony and support from the Department of Public Safety. Anyone online? No? Okay. And then testimony with comments from the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs. And on that one, I want to read this for the members and the public. From the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs testimony, they're saying that they manage licensing boards and commissions under HRS Section 26-9, primarily discussing licensing applications and the disciplining of licensees, topics which are confidential and are not disclosed to the public. Because of this, a significant portion of the meetings are spent in closed session or adjudicatory session. Thus, if this measure moves forward, the department requests the following amendment on page 4, line 10 to 16, adding the words, except for licensing boards under HRS section 26-9, when practicable, board shall record meetings open to the public and make the recording available, etc. So that's their request in their testimony. So I want to make sure everyone understands that, since DCCA representative is not here today to read that. Okay, let's move on. We have testimony, written testimony and support from Gary Hooser with Pono Hawaii Initiative, Dana Keave, Lynn Matasau, Hunter Hevelin, Shannon Rudolph, Greg Misakian, and Minister Hector Hoyos. Is there anyone else here wishing to testify on HB 712? If not, questions, members? No? Okay, thanks very much. Let's move on to House Bill 715. This is relating to gifts from lobbyists. It prohibits lobbyists from making prohibited gifts to legislators and state employees and imposes administrative fines for violations. And for everyone's awareness, we passed House Bill 142 on February 2nd, which is the same bill. proposed as part of the Ethics Commission package, and that bill is now in the Senate for their consideration. On House Bill 715, first up, we have testimony and support from Judge Foley, Commission on Standards of Conduct.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and thank you for passing out of your committee House Bill 142, an identical bill, which I supported. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from the State Ethics Commission, Robert Harris. You're getting your exercise, sir.
Thank you, Chair. I just got my notice to stand up, so perfect timing.
Perfect timing. There you go.
Likewise, we appreciate this committee hearing this, also having passed out HB 142. Just for the public's information, the intent of this is to just make the relationship equal. So not only can a state employee not accept a gift, the idea is to try to say they can't give a gift. And we hope this will be a tool that will be used to help educate and try to make these situations not arise as frequently in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from Judith Mills Wong, League of Women Voters, Gary Hooser, Pono Hawaii Initiative, William Bakasal, Democratic Party of Hawaii Legislative Committee. Come on up. The floor is yours. Please proceed.
We'll stand on our written testimony along with any future testimonies that were submitted under my name.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your testimony. Next, we have testimony with comments from Kate Payne, and testimony and support from Dana Kiave, Leimomi Khan, Lynn Matasau, Hunter Hevelin, Shannon Rudolph, Greg Misakian, and Minister Hector Hoyos. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on House Bill 715? If not, questions, members? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you. House Bill 717 relating to nepotism. Beginning July 1st, 2023, it prohibits under certain circumstances legislators and state employees from hiring or promoting relatives and household members and from making or participating in certain other employment-related decisions and from awarding a contract to or otherwise taking official action on a contract with a business if the legislator's or employee's relative or household member is an executive officer of or holds a substantial ownership interest in that business, imposes administrative fines for violations. We did consider a measure that was similar or the same previously, which we deferred because of concerns that the committee had. So I want to hear this bill again to consider if we might move out a measure that addresses those concerns. So first up, we have Judge Foley from the Commission on Standards of Conduct. Judge Foley, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and thank you for giving us a second bite at the apple. I did testify in support of an identical bill. It was part of the Ethics Commission package. And I did hear the concerns expressed by the committee. The commission recommended that this be enacted by statute with the Ethics Commission overseeing it because the testimony we got, it would be stronger than to have it in the rules or the administrative manual of the legislature with the legislature overseeing its enforcement. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from Key Campbell, Staff Attorney of the Hawaii State Ethics Commission. Please proceed.
Good afternoon, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Takayama, and members of the committee. I know you've heard a similar bill, so I'll just briefly discuss. The Commission strongly supports HB 717, which prohibits all state employees and public officials from hiring, promoting, or supervising relatives. The Commission frequently receives complaints involving allegations of nepotism, and we see a clear need to establish a bright line rule, and if necessary, a consistent and public exception process. Even in circumstances where nothing is untoward is happening, when an employee takes action affecting a family member, it creates the appearance that the employee is acting to benefit their family member rather than on the basis of merit, which undermines the public's faith in government. Finally, the Department of Human Resources previously testified that it was in favor of adding Hanai relationships to the definition of relative, and the Commission supports that amendment. Thank you for allowing the Commission to testify in support of HB 717.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from Judith Mills Wong, League of Women Voters, Dennis Jung, Democratic Party of Hawaii, Gary Hooser, Pono Hawaii Initiative, William Bagasal, Democratic Party of Hawaii Legislative Committee, Dana Kiave, Leimomi Khan, Lynn Matasau, Hunter Hevlin, Shannon Rudolph, Greg Misakian, Inga Gibson, and Minister Hector Hoyos. Is there anyone else here wishing to testify on House Bill 717? If not, questions, members? If I may have the Ethics Commission come up. In our previous hearing on a similar bill, the same bill, we had brought up the point then that, my understanding of it, the legislature needs to police ourselves, discipline ourselves, and set up our own rules. That's the way the Constitution has it set up. So I was asking at that time whether or not we would need a nepotism policy for state employment. And I understood that there is no such policy, and so you were getting questions and such, and so you felt it would be useful to have that. And Department of Human Resource Development said yes, please, and they wanted to include Hanai relationships in that. So is that accurate?
That's accurate, and under the current law, basically, only the conflicts of interest law only polices conflicts between spouses and dependent children. So a nepotism bill is necessary to address this broader swath of individuals.
And I've received a lot of concern from state agencies with offices in rural areas that, well, basically they say that everybody's related. So if we're going to hire somebody, we might run afoul of such a policy. Could you point out in this bill where there may be a process for getting, clearance to go ahead and hire somebody if there aren't any other candidates that are qualified?
Sure. It's on page 5, subsection E, line 13. Upon application, the Ethics Commission may grant an exception to a legislator or employee or agency that is unable to comply with this section for good cause, including a demonstrated lack of qualified personnel or applicants.
Okay, so that should address the concern of state agencies that have offices in rural areas where it seems like everybody's related to each other.
That was the purpose of putting this exception in.
Okay, yeah, because I represent a rural district and that happens.
No, I understand.
Families are there for generations, and they've got, lots of people who like to work in a particular industry,
Absolutely.
healthcare or something like that. Okay, Thank you very much for that explanation. Any other questions, members, on 717? If not, we'll move on. Thank you very much, sir. House Bill 718, relating to preliminary determination of probable cause, requires the Campaign Spending Commission to serve preliminary determinations of probable cause via first-class mail instead of certified mail, establishes a presumption of receipt when the preliminary determination is mailed to the address contained in a candidate or committee organizational report. For everyone's information, we heard and passed out of this committee House Bill 97 on February 1st. That measure is now in the Senate for their consideration. First up, we have testimony and support from Judge Foley, Commission on Standards of Conduct. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I submitted testimony in support of House Bill 97, an identical bill, and I thank the committee for passing it out.
Thank you, sir. Next, we have testimony and support from Gary Kam, Campaign Spending Commission.
Good afternoon, Chair Tarner, Vice Chair Takayama, members of the committee. So this committee did pass out HB 97, which is identical to this bill from the Commission to Improve Standards of Conduct. We support this bill. We acknowledge that the committee has already passed out the bill with amendments, at least the Campaign Spending Commission's bill. And I would like, on behalf of the commission, I would like to thank this Chair Tarnas and the committee for hearing all of the Campaign Spending Commission bills at an early stage in this legislative session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have, and I acknowledge your comments and appreciate them. Next, we have testimony and support from the Democratic Party Hawaii, Dennis Jung, State Party Chair. testimony and support from Greg Misakian and Lynn Matasau. Is there anyone else here wishing to testify on HB 718? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you. House Bill 721 is next, relating to candidate committee expenditures. Eliminates the use of campaign funds to purchase up to 2 tickets for an event or fundraiser held by another candidate or committee. Just for everyone's awareness, this committee approved and passed House Bill 94, which is the same bill, on February 1st, and that bill now is in the Finance Committee for their consideration. House Bill 721, we have testimony and support from Judge Foley, Commission on Standards of Conduct. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I submitted testimony in support of House Bill 94 and thank the committee for passing it out.
Thank you, sir. Next, we have testimony and support from Gary Kam, Campaign Spending Commission.
Good afternoon, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Takayama, members of the committee. I will stand on our brief written testimony support. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have testimony and support from Maki Morinoi, Huli Pack. Online? Nope. Okay. So I refer members to written testimony. Next, we have testimony and support from Dave Milenix, Our Revolution Hawaii, Gary Hooser, Pono Hawaii Initiative, Christopher Dean, Clean the Pacific, Joseph Cohn, MD, We Are One, Inc., and testimony in opposition from Leimomi Khan, and testimony in support from numerous individuals, including Lynn Matasau, Thomas Brandt, Tom DeGrazia, Pamela Burrow, Joe Wilson, Christopher Boscol, Irene Klopfer, Kim Koko Iwamoto, Elizabeth Hansen, Roger Hansen, Elaine Wender, Rexanne Dubiel, Shannon Rudolph, Hunter Heavlin, Janice Palma Glenny, Marion McHenry, Tlala Takuda, Michael Lilly, Eileen McKee, Barbara George, Paul Palmer, and Minister Hector Hoyos. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on House Bill 721? If not, questions, members? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thanks very much. Next, we have House Bill 722, relating to candidate committee and non-candidate committee fundraisers. It amends the definition of fundraiser under the election law relating to the notice of intent for fundraisers and fundraising events. Basically, if you have a fundraiser with any charge, that you've got to register it with Campaign Spending Commission. For everyone's knowledge, we approved House Bill 90, that's 90, part of the Campaign Spending Commission bill package, and that measure is now in the Senate. So on this bill, we have testimony and support from Judge Foley, Commission on Standards of Conduct. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I submitted testimony in support of House Bill 90, an identical bill, and thank the committee for passing it out.
Thank you, sir. Next, we have testimony and support from Gary Kam, Campaign Spending Commission.
Good afternoon, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Takayama, members of the committee. I will stand on our brief written testimony and support. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have written testimony and support from Gary Hooser, Lynn Matasau, and Shannon Rudolph. Is there anyone else here wishing to testify on House Bill 722? Seeing none, questions, members? If not, we'll move on. Thanks very much. House Bill 723, relating to the Sunshine Law, expands application of the state Sunshine Law to legislatively appointed bodies, including task forces, working groups, special committees, and select committees. Requires the Senate and the House of Representatives to hold public hearings on a biennial basis to solicit professional and public feedback on how chamber rules can better effectuate the intent of the state Sunshine Law. First up, we have testimony and support from Judge Dan Foley, Commission on Standards of Conduct. Please proceed, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I must apologize. After 9 months of work, 13 public hearings, 31 proposals, there's an error in this bill. As pointed out by the Office of Information Practices, the way the bill is worded doesn't make a lot of sense, and the amendment Nikos Leverance proposed would correct it. The reference into the bill that we're only talking about working groups and committees composed entirely of state legislators doesn't make any sense. I'm not sure how that got in there. That should be deleted. The purpose of the bill was to have the Sunshine Law apply to various committees, task forces, and commissions like my commission to improve standards of conduct, where the Sunshine Law does not already apply. We do have in there that the legislature can make an exception. For example, with the Commission to Improve Standards of Conduct, if the Sunshine Law had applied from the beginning, we would not have been able to do our work and to have submitted the interim report within 5 to 6 weeks. But we did try to comply with it, even though we weren't required to do so as much as possible, and holding hearings and putting together our final report. So that is the intent of the bill, but it should be, if it passes out of committee, amended as suggested by Nikos Leverins in his written testimony. And again, it shows the benefit, Mr. Chairman, of your committee posting this testimony online so people like myself can review it before testifying. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Next, we have testimony with comments from Cheryl Park, Office of Information Practices. I will refer members to her written testimony. She's not here. Is she on Zoom? No. Okay. Next, we have testimony with comments from Douglas Meller, League of Women Voters of Hawaii. Testimony and support from Gary Hooser, Pono Hawaii Initiative, Kathy Gogol, Animal Rights Hawaii, Greg Misakian, and Nikos Leverins, who's no longer online, but I refer you to his written testimony. Also testimony and support from Dana Kiave, Derek Carlin, Will Karen, Lynn Matasau, Nani, Hunter Hevelin, Shannon Rudolph. Testimony with comments from John Winter, and testimony and support from Inga Gibson. Is there anyone else here wishing to testify on House Bill 723? Seeing none, thanks to those testifiers, we'll move on. House Bill 724, relating to campaign contributions, amends the prohibition against contributions to a candidate committee or non-candidate committee by state and county contractors to include state and county grantees and owners, officers, and immediate family members of a state or county contractor or state or county grantee. Just so everyone knows, we did hear a very similar bill, House Bill 96, which we deferred because of our concern that it was so broad that it would have captured thousands of people because it included employees of these state and county contractors and state and county grantees. This proposed legislation does not include the word employees. So that's a distinct difference that I wanted everyone to see and consider as we discuss this bill. First up, we have testimony and support from Judge Foley, Commission on Standards of Conduct. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I participated in your last hearing on a similar bill from the Campaign Spending Commission, House Bill 96, and I thought your committee was spot on in being concerned about the breadth of including employees. In fact, the bill was originally proposed to the commission with employees covered, and we deleted employees for the very reasons you had concerns. So we would ask our version pass because it doesn't have the concerns raised by House Bill 96. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Next, we have testimony and support from Gary Kam, Campaign Spending Commission.
Good afternoon, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Takayama, and members of the committee. I did have a chance after the last hearing on HB 96 to speak to a Deputy Attorney General, and your deferral of that bill was justified. We are in support of this bill, and we ask that the committee pass this version out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from Dennis Jung, State Party Chair, Democratic Party of Hawaii, Gary Hooser, Pono Hawaii Initiative, Greg Misakian, Dana Kiave, Lynn Matasau, Will Karen, Hunter Hevelin, and Shannon Rudolph. Is there anyone else here wishing to testify on HB 724? If not, questions, members? Seeing none, we'll move on to the last measure on our agenda. House Bill 726 prohibits it's relating to campaign contributions, prohibits state and county elected officials from soliciting and accepting campaign contributions during any regular session or special session of the state legislature, including any extension of any regular session or special session and any legislative recess days, holidays, and weekends. Just for everyone's information, this bill did hear and pass out of committee, House Bill 89, which was the same bill except it had a different title. And I had expressed at that time some concerns about the title, because for those who are watching, the title has to, all the contents of the bill, the subject matter of the bill, must be directly related to the title of the bill. And if the title is one thing and the contents are slightly different, then that's not appropriate and the bill could fail. So I did note concerns about the title. This title, however, is directly related to the subject matter, so I don't think we would have that same problem. With that in mind, House Bill 726, first up, testimony and support from Judge Foley, Commission on Standards of Conduct. Please proceed.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I did testify in support of House Bill 89, but I, like you, Mr. Chairman, like the title of our bill much better. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from Gary Kam, Campaign Spending Commission. Please proceed.
Good afternoon, Chair Tarnas, Vice Chair Takayama, members of the committee. I hear what you said about this bill, and the commission hopes that that this committee passes this version out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have testimony and support from Maki Marinoi, Huli Pak. Testimony and support from Dave Milanix, Our Revolution Hawaii, William Bagasal, Democratic Party of Hawaii Legislative Committee, Dennis Jung, Democratic Party of Hawaii State Party Chair, Gary Hooser, Pona Hawaii Initiative, Joseph Kohn, We Are One Inc., Greg Misakian, Leimomi Khan, Will Karen, Thomas Brandt, Tom DeGrazia, Pamela Burrell, and testimony in opposition from Lynn Matasau, and testimony and support from other individuals, Joe Wilson, Christopher Bosco, Everin Williams, Marilyn Mick, Mele Stocksberry, Irene Klopfer, Troy Schacht, Hunter Hevlin, Roger and Elizabeth Hansen, Kim Koko Iwamoto, Rexan Dubiel, Tony Radmilovich, Elaine Wender, Shannon Rudolph, Janice Palma Glenny, Marion McHenry, Cliff and Mary DeVries, Talala Tukuda, Michael Lilly, Eileen McKee, Barbara George, and Jay Williams. Thank you to all those testifiers. Is there anyone else here wishing to testify on HB 726? If not, questions, members? If not, I want to say thank you to all the testifiers here in person and online on all these measures before us that came from the Commission on Improving Standards of Conduct. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. We will. Okay, great. Thanks. We will move into decision making. We have one member that will show up presently, but let me get my papers together. Thank you, members, for breaking away from your other responsibilities and joining us so we can vote. Okay, members, so we're passing out now a proposed draft of the bill that will come up a little bit later. It's 717. So just hold on to that bill and we'll get to it as it is in order in the agenda. Okay, first up, we have House Bill 705. As I mentioned during the hearing, this committee passed HB 136 on February 2nd, part of the Ethics Commission package of bills. That bill is moving under legislative consideration. So for that reason, I would like to defer HB 705. just to be clear, we support this bill, but we already passed the same bill, HB 136. Okay. House Bill 706. Again, we heard all of the Commission on Improving Standards of Conduct because I promised to hear all the bills from the Commission on Improving Standards of Conduct. But we passed out the same bills that came from the Ethics Commission or the Campaign Spending Commission in the past. And so that's why we're deferring some of these bills, if we passed out those bills earlier. So HB 706, we passed out House Bill 141 from the Ethics Commission, and so it's the same bill, so we're going to defer HB 706. Okay, HB 707. On this measure, I would like to move out House Draft 1 with some amendments. I would like to make some changes on pages 2 and 3. On page 2, I want to adopt the Attorney General's amendments. On line 12, change frivolous to fictitious. On line 16, change frivolous to fictitious. On page 3, line 5, change the word fictitious to fictitious. And I would like to, on line 15, I agree with the public defenders that I want to make sure that anyone charged under this section still would have the possibility to request a deferred acceptance of guilty plea or a nolo contendere. So I would like to delete the word not, which is on line 15, page 3. So the sentence would read, any person charged under this section shall be eligible for a deferred acceptance fee of guilty plea or nolo contendere under Chapter 853. So they would have to request that. And then on Section 3, I'm making this change in this bill, and I'll be making them in other bills. A prohibition against seeking legislative elected office for 10 years is not provided in Article 3, Section 6 of the Constitution, which sets out the qualifications for those running for elected office. So in my understanding of this, according to discussions with our attorneys, Section 3, as it's written, would be unconstitutional. So that's why I'm seeking to change it. So what we could do, because we do want to give, instead of disqualifying someone from holding elected public office for a period of 10 years, I would like to delete the word holding elected public office and inserting the word receiving public financing for elections. Because that we can do without running afoul of the Constitution. So it would read, a person who is convicted under this section or for making a false, fictitious, or fraudulent claim under Section 710 shall be disqualified from receiving public financing for elections for a period of 10 years from the date of conviction. Those are my recommended changes. Oh, and we're also adopting the Attorney General's amendments to define claim and material. And, sorry, our attorneys also suggested that we make some other changes, because on page 3, line 15 to 17, normally when an offense is exempted from Chapter 853, we amend Section 853-413 to specifically list the offense. So we're going to do that. And then on page 4, line 1 to 4, rather than inserting the new language into Section 11-412D, which is about criminal prosecution of campaign finance violations, the disqualifying language should be included in the new section that is establishing the offense. So it's just a cleaner way of writing the bill. So with those changes, my recommendation is pass out on HD1. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on House Bill 707 with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Ganadin. Representative Holt excused. Representative Hashimoto.
Aye.
Representative Ichiyama.
Aye.
Representative Ilagan.
Aye.
Representative Kong excused. Representative Mizuno.
Aye.
Representative Souza.
Aye.
Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. Next we have House Bill 708. Because we passed out the same bill, HB 137, on February 2nd, and that measure is now in the Senate for their consideration, I would like to defer this measure. Next, House Bill 709. Because we passed out House Bill 138 on February 2nd, and it is now in the Senate for their consideration, I would like to defer House Bill 709. Next, House Bill 710. On this matter, I would like to recommend passing out an amended bill, an HD1. And the amendments I'm recommending, first, I would like to incorporate the Attorney General's amendment, which replaces the phrase person knowingly and willfully on page 3, line 9 to person intentionally or knowingly. I would like to include the I would like to amend 710 to still allow those convicted under the statute to be eligible for a deferred plea. It would be the same change that I made in the earlier bill. I would like to adopt the prosecuting attorney's suggestion on this measure as well. And then HMSO has recommended the same changes to this one that I had described for House Bill 707, just to make it a cleaner writing of the language in the bill. And then I would like to also include changes, so as I mentioned, the public defender, so to make it compliant with what the public defender would wish, which is still, I would, on page 4, removing the word not, so that it would read, a person convicted of violating this section shall be eligible for a deferred acceptance of guilty plea or nolo contendere plea under Chapter 853. And then on page 5, I want to make the same change because, again, as I had mentioned earlier, the prohibition against seeking legislative elected office for 10 years is not provided in Article 3, Section 6 of the state constitution, which sets forth the qualifications for those running for public office. Therefore, Section 3 as written is unconstitutional in my analysis, and therefore I would like to change Section 3 to remove the words on lines 7 and 8, so removing holding elective public office and insert the words receiving public financing for elections. So therefore, if someone is convicted under this section, they shall be disqualified from receiving public financing for elections for a period of 10 years from the date of conviction. Let's see. And that's all the changes that I would recommend. So House Bill 710, HD1 with those amendments. Questions or concerns, members? Yes, Representative Ganadin.
I'm certainly grateful, and I think a lot of us are grateful for all the work that the chair has done and vice chair have done in amending this bill. I think that the amendments essentially gut it, and the bill doesn't accomplish what we hope it will accomplish, which is to eliminate fraud and people who we would think would be disqualified from holding government office from joining us here at the legislature. So for those reasons, I'm going to be voting with reservations.
Understood. Other questions or concerns, members? And I would just say, and I appreciate Representative Ganadin's position on this, that if we were to change the qualifications for elected office, we'd have to do it in the Constitution. So that would be a different bill. Okay, any other questions or concerns? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on House Bill 710 with amendments, noting the excused absences of Representative Holt and Kong and the reservations of Representative Ganadin. Anyone else wishing to vote WR or no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. House Bill 711 relating to fraud. My recommendation is to pass out an amended bill. On page 4, line 12 to 15, rather than inserting the new language into section 11-412D, which is about criminal prosecution of campaign finance violations, the disqualifying language should be included in the new section that is establishing this offense. I would also like to include an amendment that It's the same that we just discussed to address the concern brought by the public defender. So on page 4, line 8, I would like to amend that so that I would take out what is proposed in there, which is shall be sentenced with a mandatory minimum term of imprisonment of 1 year without the possibility of probation. I would like to include in there fraud is a Class B felony, and a person convicted under this section shall be, new languages, eligible for deferred acceptance of a guilty plea or nolo contendere plea under Chapter 853. And then under Section 3, line 13 and 14, I would remove holding elected public office, again, insert the words receiving public financing for elections. So that anyone convicted under this section shall be disqualified from receiving public financing for elections for a period of 10 years from the date of conviction. That, I believe, would pass constitutional muster. So with those changes, I would recommend that we pass out an amended bill, HD1. Questions or concerns, members? Representative Gannon.
Thank you again, Chair. Same concern. I think that there are some excellent bills and ideas that have come out of the commission that have already passed out of this committee. I just don't think that this is one of them. I don't think it's going to pass constitutional muster, and it's not going to accomplish what we hope it is going to accomplish. But it's evident to all here the amount of work that you and others have put into amending this bill and others to try and get it passed.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on House Bill 711 with amendments, noting the excused absences of Representatives Holt and Kong and the reservations of Representative Ganadin. Anyone else wishing to vote WR or no? Your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. Next, House Bill 712, relating to recordings of public meetings. On this one, I'd like to recommend passing out an amended bill, so an HD1, incorporate the recommendation from the Office of Information Practices, which is on page 3 of their testimony, amending the bill on page 5, lines 13 to 16, so that it would read, if an electronic audio or video recording of the meeting is available online, a link to the electronic audio or video recording of the meeting to be placed at the beginning of the minutes. I also want to incorporate the recommended amendment from the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs, page 2 of their testimony, page 4 of the bill, lines 10 to 16. Add the word except for licensing boards under HRS section 26-9. When practicable, boards shall record meetings open to the public, etc. That is to address the concern that those licensing boards are actually discussing confidential matters. And I also want to include in the standing committee report the comments from the archivist that's in their testimony, saying that it's strongly recommended that a copy of existing audio, video minutes, and agenda created for or during board meetings and intended to be kept as a public record should be transferred to the state archives for preservation as soon as practicable, but no later than prior to the removal from the board's website. And they would prefer these files be transmitted to the archives within 1 month of their creation to prevent any issues. And that the state archives will create an online transfer mechanism to ease the burden on the committees, while allowing the archives to capture the necessary metadata to establish the authenticity of the transferred records. So I'll put that language into the standing committee report so that can be memorialized. With that, I would like to pass out a House Draft 1 with those changes. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on House Bill 712 with amendments, noting the excused absences of Holt and Kong. Anyone wishing to vote WR or no? Seeing none, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. Next, moving on to House Bill 715. This committee passed House Bill 142, part of the Ethics Commission package, on February 2nd. That measure is now in the Senate for deliberations, and so for that reason, I would like to defer House Bill 715. House Bill 717. We did hear the same bill, and we deferred it because I had concerns because we, as a legislature, are directed by the Constitution to manage ourselves and discipline ourselves and set our own rules of procedure. Administrative manual and rules are the documents in which we lay out those specific requirements. And so I did not want to put in statute our policies regarding employment and have someone from the executive branch oversee us, because the separation of powers are that we need to police ourselves. So in fact, the House of Representatives adopted revised rules and revised administrative manual that includes language specifically about nepotism in the administrative manual. And so I would like to propose to the committee that we pass out a House Draft 1 which deletes the parts of this bill referring to legislators, because we're addressing it in our own administrative and financial manual, and focus the bill solely on establishing a nepotism policy regarding state employment, and also include a section in there regarding Hanai relationships. I have provided for each of you in front of you a copy of that proposed change, and I want to thank the Ethics Commission for drafting that for us, which I requested when we heard that bill previously. With that recommendation, I would like to, I'm proposing to pass out an HD1 as reflected in the draft before you. Any questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on House Bill 717 with amendments, noting the excused absences of Holt and Kong. Anyone wishing to vote WR or no? Your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. And I would like to acknowledge that the measure does already include a provision that would address the concern that we had heard from state agencies with offices in rural areas who might not otherwise have other qualified candidates except for those who might be related. So that should be covered in the bill. So I want to acknowledge that. Okay, next, House Bill 718, relating to preliminary determination of probable cause. I want to note for the public that this committee passed HB 97 on February 1st. That measure is now in the Senate for consideration, and so therefore I would like to defer House Bill 718. House Bill 721, relating to candidate committee expenditures. I would like to point out we passed House Bill 94, part of the Campaign Spending Commission package, on February 1st. That bill is now in Finance for consideration, and therefore I would like to defer House Bill 721. House Bill 722, this committee passed House Bill 90 from the Campaign Spending Commission package on February 1st. That measure is now in the Senate, and therefore I would like to defer House Bill 722. Okay, now House Bill 723 relating to the Sunshine Law. On this measure, I want to note that under the Constitution, Section 12, which regards organization, discipline, and rules procedure, the legislature is tasked with making its own rules for the organization and discipline. And every meeting of a committee in either house or of a committee comprised of a member or members from both houses must hold all their decision-making committee meetings open to the public. We also, Section 7 of the Constitution, which is entitled Privileges of Members, it states that no member of legislature shall be held to answer before any other tribunal for any statement made or action taken in the exercise of the member's legislative function. My concern with this bill is that it would violate constitutional requirements that I just described. because the proposal would subject all legislative committees, standing committees, working groups, special committees, and even the committees of the whole, that's the entire House, to the Sunshine Law. The effect of this, just so I'm clear with everyone, if we were subject to the Sunshine Law, that would prohibit more than 2 legislators from discussing the proposals outside of properly noticed meetings with agenda and public hearings. Since all legislators vote and debate committee recommendations in session, all members of the committee of the whole would likewise be restricted. The Sunshine Law, if it were applied to the legislature, would prohibit private caucuses, like the majority caucus or minority caucus or any other caucus. It would prevent bills sponsored privately by more than 2 members. It would limit public input only to public hearings. Public interaction with legislators would be severely restricted. A public member could speak privately to an individual legislator, but Sunshine prohibits lobbying of one legislator after another in a serial fashion. So if we were to apply the Sunshine Law to the legislature, it would, in my opinion, limit our ability to function and do our job. It would violate the Constitution, and it would actually limit the public's ability to interact with the legislators. So, what I would like to do is amend this bill to apply the Sunshine Law and make it clear what legislative committees, legislatively appointed committees, must be covered by the Sunshine Law. Because there's a disagreement. The Office of Information Practices in their testimony said that those legislative appointed committees that are formed by resolution are not subject to the Sunshine Law, and those that are formed by statute are subject to the Sunshine Law. Well, the House attorneys are advising us and that that's not the case. Those legislative appointed committees that consist entirely of legislators are not subject to the Sunshine Law for the reasons I just outlined. However, those legislative appointed committees that are composed in part or in whole of non-legislators are subject to the Sunshine Law. So what I want to do with this House Draft 1 is to make that clear, so that on page 3, page 4, paragraph D, for the purposes of this section, quote, legislatively appointed body means a task force, working group, special committee, commission, or select committee that has a membership consisting in part or whole of non-legislators who were appointed by one or both houses of the legislature or one or both of the presiding officers of each house of the legislature. That way we make it clear which bodies are subject to Sunshine Law. And because the legislature, House and Senate, are tasked by the Constitution to come up with our own rules, and as I just described earlier, I would like to delete paragraph C, which is page 3, line 17, all the way to page 4, line 2, so that we are consistent with the Constitution. With those changes, I would like to request the bill pass out on HD1. Questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on House Bill 723 with amendments, noting the excused absences of Representatives Holt and Kong. Anyone wishing to vote WR or no? Seeing none, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Moving on to House Bill 724, relating to campaign contributions. As I mentioned earlier, we had considered HB 96, which was similar, except it included the word employees, which I objected to because I felt that that would have constitutional problems by limiting free speech. It was far too broad. It would include thousands of people for contractors of the state and county that are large corporations. This bill does not include the word employees, and it still captures a lot of people. It would be prohibit contributions to a candidate committee or non-candidate committee by state and county contractors, state and county grantees, the owners, officers, and immediate family members of a contractor or grantee. So it's very broad. It would, in my own case, I have campaign contributors that are officers in companies that are contractors or grantees. So I would lose some of those campaign contributors. So it has direct effect on all of us. But with that in mind, I would recommend we pass this as is. Questions or concerns, members? Yes, Representative Troy Hashimoto.
Thank you, Chair. I think I had an exchange with the Campaign Spending Commission on the exact bill previously that you were just talking about, and I think I do still have some concerns about how it's applied, how they'll enforce this, and I think there is still some issues with constitutional concerns about free speech, so I'm going to vote with reservations.
Understood, and I appreciate you bringing that up. Other questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on House Bill 724, passing as is, noting the excused absences of Representatives Holt and Kong and the reservations of Representative Hashimoto. Anyone else wishing to vote WR and noting the reservations of Representative Ganadin. Anyone else wishing to vote WR or no? Seeing none, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Now moving on to the last bill on this agenda, House Bill 726. Because we did consider House Bill 89 and we passed it out, but I had noted at that time that I was concerned about the title not being accurate or not accurately reflecting the subject matter of the bill. This measure has the same language, but it has a better title relating to campaign contributions. So for that reason, I would like to pass this out as is. Even though it's redundant, it's got a better title. So I think it's got a stronger chance of being approved. With that, passing it out as is, questions or concerns, members? If not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on House Bill 726, passing as is, noting the excused absences of Representatives Holt and Kong. Anyone wishing to vote WR or no? Seeing none, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. Members, we do have a hearing tomorrow. We'll hear the balance of the bills from the campaign to improve standards of conduct and other measures. I look forward to seeing you then. There being no further business before us today, this meeting is adjourned.